Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller drama films from 2017, titled Unforgettable. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens in a police station with a woman named Julia being interrogated for the murder of her ex-boyfriend, Michael Vargas. An officer accuses her of returning to Michael, despite previously charging him with domestic violence and obtaining a restraining order against him. Julia insists she's been set up, and denies any involvement in the murder. The officer then shows her the evidence, which includes their Facebook conversations, and her underwear that was found in Michael's car. The film then flashes back 6 months to San Francisco. Julia is attending her farewell party at work, where her best friend, Ali, congratulates her on her recent engagement. It turns out that Julia is about to move to another state with her fiancé, and work remotely. She is nervous because she is still traumatized by Michael's abuse, but Ali reassures her that she will be fine. In the next scene, Julia and her fiancé David, on their way to their house, which is David's hometown, both are very happy and excited about their plan to get married soon. On the other hand, we see David's ex-wife, Tessa, with whom he has a daughter named Lily. The next day, Tessa arrives at David's house to drop off Lily. Here, Julia and Tessa meet for the first time and exchange greetings. It seems that Tessa is still struggling to accept the end of her marriage. The following morning, after David heads off to work, Julia receives a notification, informing her that the restraining order she imposed on Michael has expired. This worries her because she is still afraid of him and hasn't been able to forget about his abuse. In the afternoon, while Julia is preparing lunch, Tessa arrives at the house to drop off Lily's ballet shoes. The little girl is thrilled to see her mother and eagerly asks her to stay for lunch. Julia also likes the idea and she invites her in. During the meal, Tessa constantly scolds her daughter for cutting some of the foods with a fork instead of a knife, and it seems that she is overly controlling. Tessa stays to put Lily to bed, and of course Julia is not thrilled about this. And before she departs, the mother bids Julie good night. Later that night, David still hasn't returned from work, and Julia hears a noise. She goes downstairs to check, but to her horror, she catches a glimpse of Michael through the window. At the same moment, David suddenly enters the house, and she mistakes him for Michael. Julia then shares with him the awkward moment she had with Tessa earlier. She also worries about not being able to take care of Lily well due to her lack of experience, but David assures her that she will do very well. The next day, Julia is in town when she spots a boutique store. She finds a lovely white dress inside, and she likes it so much that she decides to wear it for the wedding. Later, Julia tells David that they should tell Tessa and Lily about their plans to get married. Afterward, David and Julia came together for the children's holiday. Tessa is also there, and after the performance, she watches as Lily leave with David and his new girlfriend, and the girl is clearly having fun. Watching this, Tessa goes crazy with jealousy. She thinks that Julia wants to take her place. One evening, David throws a party to celebrate the launch of his beer business he's started. But Julia is shocked to see Tessa arrive wearing the same white dress she had planned to buy. Tessa suddenly takes the stage and delivers a speech about leaving her city life to come here, and be with David during their marriage. She also claims to have always supported him, despite their many disagreements. Up next, David and Julia start dancing, while Tessa observes them with jealousy. Just then, she notices a message on Julia's phone from Ali, disclosing that Julia and David are planning to get married, which breaks her heart. Later, at home, Julia tells David that she can't find her phone anywhere. David tries calling it, and it turns out that the phone is with Tessa. Tessa has found Julia's date of birth on the internet to guess her password, and she succeeds. She is rummaging through Julia's photos and files to find something against her. After searching for a while, she eventually finds the restraining order against Michael, which immediately interests her. The next day, David is at work when Tessa arrives, and starts questioning him if he really knows Julia well. David claims that he's happy with Julia, and also reveals the news that they're getting married. Upon hearing this, Tessa expresses her worries about her daughter because Julia doesn't know how to cook or parent. However, David explains that Julia is doing her best. Tessa then attempts to get closer to David, claiming she regrets what happened every single day, but he firmly asks her to leave. As she walks away, she drops Julia's phone in his car. Later, David returns Julia's cell phone, mentioning he found it in his car. Shortly after, Julia gets a call from an unknown number, but when she answers, no one responds, and this worries her. Meanwhile, Tessa is combing Lily's hair, and she complains about how David and Julia always send her back with tangled hair. Just then, her mother, Lovey, arrives to visit, and Lily is excited to see her grandma. It becomes apparent that Tessa inherited her controlling nature from her mother. Lovey starts correcting Tessa on everything, from her behavior to how she sits and eats. She then suggests to Tessa that she should pull herself together and look for a new man. But Tessa claims that all this change is hard, and she isn't ready to be with someone else. Later on, while looking at her wedding photos, Tessa cries. On the other hand, a long-term friend of David's reveals that initially, everyone thought Tessa was great, and they liked her. However, over time, they noticed how controlling and possessive she became of David. When he reached his breaking point, he decided to end their relationship. But, coincidentally, Tessa turned out to be pregnant, which led them to get back together. We see that Julia keeps receiving calls from unknown numbers, which she ignores. To make matters worse, she also receives calls on her landline, and when she answers, there's silence on the other end. Elsewhere, we see Tessa creating a fake profile of Julia on Facebook, and uploading her pictures. The next day, as Julia is alone at home, trying to take a bath, a mysterious person breaks in. The intruder steals her underwear, her wedding ring, and David's watch. Moments later, there is a knock on her door, and Julia cautiously comes out, only to find roses on the doorstep. Tessa also suddenly shows up, and claims to have seen a man leaving, but Julia gets annoyed and asks her to stop coming to their house all the time. Tessa reveals that she just came to drop off David's jury summons mail. Afterward, Julia does some research and learns that the flowers were ordered anonymously. This scares her as she believes Michael Vargas has come back into her life. At night, her paranoia crosses limits when she sees Michael's face in David, startling her. Frustrated and angry, Julia calls Ali and informs her that she believes that Michael is trying to find her again. Ali reassures her that no one knows where she lives, and Julia doesn't even have social media. Ali then inquires if David is aware of this, to which Julia admits she has not informed him because it is too difficult for her. On the other hand, Tessa uses Julia's fake profile to finally communicate with Michael. He is shocked that she's reached out to him after all these years. She then pretends to miss him, and Michael is overjoyed and claims he missed her too. She also sends him some sexy photos of Julia. Meanwhile, Julia searches for her ring throughout the house but fails to find it, leaving her frustrated. The next day, Julia bumps into Tessa in town, and both of them apologize for their earlier argument. They decide to go for lunch together, during which Tessa opens up about her relationship with David. She claims that she had an affair with another guy, which ended their marriage. David devoted all his time to work, so she felt very lonely. She also reveals that she and David used to be unable to get away from each other, and they used to make love often, even in public places. Hearing this, Julia is confused. David behaves completely differently with her. Tessa also requests to see the engagement ring, but Julia claims that she has given it to the cleaners. That same evening, Tessa goes through Julia's things, which means that she was the intruder. Days later, Julia takes Lily to a park to attend her dad's beer exhibition. She again receives a call from an unknown number and answers it. As usual, no one speaks on the other end, and when she hangs up, Lily is nowhere to be found. Worried, Julia rushes to David and informs him of the situation. The two then begin searching for the little girl everywhere, and at one point, Julia thinks she sees Michael again. Shortly after, Julia finds that Tessa and David have found her, and the woman complains that Julia is unfit to watch her daughter. Later, when they get home, David is frustrated by her reckless behavior, and reveals that Tessa found Lily wandering through the parking lot, talking to some guy. Julia apologizes for what happened, and he asks about her ring, so she truthfully admits that she lost it. David then asks about the anonymous flowers, but Tessa claims she doesn't know who sent them. Here David begins to get upset because Tessa is afraid to leave Lily with them. He fears that his ex-wife will forbid him from seeing the daughter. The next morning, we see Tessa trying to teach her daughter to ride a horse, even though the little girl appears to be reluctant and scared. Just then, Julia arrives and sees Lily is terrified, but her mother forbids her from getting off the horse. Julia then asks Lily to get off the horse, as today is her father's special day. The incident enrages Tessa, and her mother, who was watching from a distance, tells her that it was humiliating. In the car, Julia asks who the man was that Lily was talking to at the parking lot. But Lily has no idea what she's talking about, and Julia figures out that Tessa was just making up stories. In the evening, David couldn't find the watch that Julia had given him. Julia and David then attend a gathering with their business investors. During dinner, she recalls Tessa saying how Tessa and David used to make love in public places. Julia then gets up and takes her fiancé to the bathroom, where they passionately become intimate. Meanwhile, Tessa continues chatting with Michael through Julia's fake profile, and seducing him. The next day, Julia receives an email with a message saying, "I miss you." To her surprise, along with it is a picture of her and Michael together. Moments later, Tessa arrives with Lily, and Julia notices that she has cut her daughter's hair, as punishment for disobeying her. This enrages her, so she gets into an argument with Tessa. Shortly after, David's voice is heard, and Tessa begins to act like Julia is hurting her.
Stay away from me! Tessa!
She deliberately falls down the stairs, and David is shocked to see the scenario. Tessa states that Julia pushed her off the stairs, so Julia argues she hasn't done anything, but David refuses to listen and takes Tessa to the hospital. Afterward, Julia tells David what really happened, but he no longer knows what to believe. David is very tired of constant arguments and promises to talk to his ex-wife again, hoping that she will finally leave them alone. Following the incident, Julia reaches her breaking point and calls a lead to the house. The two girls begin an investigation into Tessa's background. After conducting a thorough check, they uncover a psychiatric report detailing Tessa's history of violent and obsessive behavior. It is revealed that at the age of 16, her father left her mother for another woman. Because of this, Tessa set fire to her father's house while he was still inside. But despite the seriousness of her actions, her mother, Lovey, declined the recommended psychiatric care for her daughter. In the next scene, Julia decides to tell David the truth about Tessa's psychotic behavior. But right after her friend leaves.
Hey, baby.
Michael shows up at the house. Julia can't believe what she's seeing, while Michael attempts to get close to her because he assumes they've been communicating all this time. Julia tries to call the cops, but he angrily throws the phone away. He then starts treating her aggressively and hits her, but before he can cause any serious damage, Julia plunges a kitchen knife into his leg, and flees from there. We also learn that Tessa has been watching near the house the whole time. After Julia leaves, Tessa shows up at the house to find Michael wounded. During this, it finally dawns on Michael that she is the one who has been communicating with him all along. But before he can do anything, she stabs him in the heart, ending his life. We are then taken to the opening scene. Julia asserts that it was Tessa who orchestrated the events and murdered Michael, but the police are not convinced by her story. Upon hearing about the situation, David rushes to the police station, and Julia finally confides in him about her past with Michael. She also claims that she is innocent and hasn't killed anyone. Fortunately, David believes her and reassures her that they will overcome this together. After this, David goes to the officer, and the latter shows Julia and Michael's text messages. Julia planned to sell her engagement ring to send money to Michael, and even sent him the watch that David had lost. David cannot believe she could do this to him, so the detective advises him to go home with his daughter. After David leaves, the officer informs Julia that all the evidence seems to point towards her. But since the evidence is circumstantial, she will be released for now. Julia asks about her fiancé, and the officer replies that he went to see his daughter. In the meantime, Tessa is destroying the evidence, right when David arrives at her house. She is pleased to see him, but he ignores her and goes directly to see his daughter. Elsewhere, Julia tries to call David to warn him about Tessa, but he has left his phone in the car. After checking on Lily, David goes down to the living room, where he sees Tessa burning some gloves and evidence in the fireplace. He also notices her wearing Julia's ring, and realizes she is the culprit. Here, she starts talking about how David divorced her for one mistake and gave Julia everything. Hearing this, a worried David realizes that his ex-wife is out of her mind, and he's taking Lily home. But then, she strikes him in the head with a fireplace poker, knocking him to the ground. However, she immediately feels bad and promises to take care of him. While Tessa goes to fetch some medicine, Julia arrives at the house, and discovers David barely conscious. She informs him that she's going to get help, but he urges her to check on Lily first. Julia then makes her way upstairs, and grabs the little girl. After putting her in her car outside, she returns to the house, and notices Tessa cleaning David's wounds, and tying him up with duct tape. Julia discreetly tries to call 911 using the landline, but Tessa catches her and unplugs the phone. The two then get into a vicious fight, and Tessa taunts Julia about how weak and pathetic she is, and that she let Michael get away with everything after he abused her. Hearing this, Julia punches her, and a fight breaks out between the women. In the end, Julia manages to knock Tessa to the ground. She then rushes to David to help him, but then all of a sudden, Tessa tries to attack her with a knife. But when Tessa looks at the mirror, she is horrified to see herself bruised and scratched. She also glances at her daughter's picture, and realizes the monster she has become. During this vulnerable moment, Julia takes the knife from her and asks her to stay back. But surprisingly, Tessa impales herself in the stomach with the knife Julia is now holding. In her final moments, she begs her not to let Lily remember her like this. After the crazy woman passes away, Julia rushes to help David, and he apologizes to her for not believing her. Soon after, an ambulance arrives and transports David to the hospital. The previous officer also apologizes to Julia for what happened. The scene then shifts to 6 months later, where we see that Julia and David are now married. They are happily living with Lily, and everything seems to be going well. But then all of a sudden, someone knocks on their door, and it turns out to be Lovey. She's here to see her granddaughter, and excitedly hugs Lily. And this is where the movie ends. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.